like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the Samsung big screen we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start. But you really should touch the merchandise before you buy. Time for that upgrade to an HD 3D web-enabled Samsung TV. Get the best selection, price, and service in town without waiting. Come in to Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise today.
Hi, I'm John Mallows. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this day. Today we're going to be talking to a DUI attorney, and your phone calls are encouraged at 436-MeTV option 11. We'll talk about DUI crashes and you know, just anything that's relevant to it. But if you call in, do turn down the sound. Back with our program in just a moment. Glad to have you along here on a day that we're talking to an expert. It is an Ask an Expert Day, 436-MeTV option 11. Of course, do turn down the sound when you call in or we won't be able to hear you. You know, one of the things I want to mention about DUI crashes or DUIs in general, we generally speaking don't talk about them until maybe the first of the year, right around New Year's or something of that nature, or if there's a big crash like the Donovan Maldonado case, and it's headline news all over the Central Valley and all over California with this little boy that was killed, of course, going across the crosswalk with his family in northeast Fresno a couple of years ago. It got all of the attention, but we have focused not only on that case, but on DUI cases in general on this program in the past, and today we have an expert in the house to talk about that as well. Let's go to the videotape. I'll show you what I'm talking about. A horrific DUI crash recently over here in Delray, that's near Sanger, where 3 sisters were killed in this DUI crash. There were 4 sisters in all in the car. 3 of them died. 1 was sent to the hospital. But in terms of the law, of course, you cannot drive with a blood alcohol level that is equal to or above 0.08. But we're going to talk about the law and what a gray area it certainly is. It is sketchy at best. That's why we have an expert in the house to explain all of that. Can you actually be convicted of a DUI crash if it is under the legal limit? We'll talk to our expert about that and much more. In the meantime, crashes like this happening all too often here in the Central Valley. Live in our studio right now is Terry Wapner. He is an expert. To say the least, he's a DUI attorney. He has been for the last 15 years or so. He's been practicing law for the better part of 25 years, so he knows the topic well. He defends many of these suspects that are involved in some of these crashes. He knows the law inside out. So your phone calls are important. 436-MeTV option 11. Do turn down the sound. Today's topic on the show, Connect with Me, on MeTV Fresno, is DUIs. We're back with our program in just a moment.
Remember me?
After practicing law, Raymond Berg fought crime.
You have the right to an attorney.
As a hard-boiled detective on wheels,
Ain't it the truth?
his name is Ironside.
Perhaps you wouldn't mind saying it again.
His name is Ironside.
All right, now you've said it.
Nothing slows him down.
I want to see this one firsthand.
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Now, what are we waiting for?
It's a topic that not too many people talk about until something happens, or if it's right around New Year's Eve, then we all talk about it. Don't drink and drive. You know, call a taxi, call a limo service, call a friend to be the alternate driver. There's no question about that. Terry Wapner, I'm glad to invite you and have you on the program today.
Thanks for
on
having
Connect with me. I appreciate it very much. So I talked in the monologue a little bit about the law and what it is. It's 0.08. We all know that. So you can't be at that limit or above, or legally you're drunk and you're driving under the influence. But the question that I have is, and a lot of people don't know, there's a gray area. Can you be below that limit and still be convicted of a crime.
Yes, and actually, and what you said earlier, there is no rule about drinking and driving. The rule is, because you can't have a drink and drive, and there's no penalty to that. The rule is that you can't drive under the influence, and in California that means that we're not able to operate a motor vehicle safely, or a .08 or higher. The legislature has determined that everybody at a .08 is a DUI, whether or not they're actually under the influence. So there are some people that hold their liquor a little better, and that could be a person at an 09 maybe, and they're able to drive a car safely. And then there are other people that are an 07 or an 06, and they can't drive a car safely. They're typically teetotalers that have something to drink, that aren't able to drink and maintain their safety in a car. So you can be convicted of both, one or both.
Well, so you could be driving a car, a vehicle, and be caught weaving, say, in and out of traffic, or driving erratically, and you could get stopped by an officer. They could do the blood alcohol level there, and you could be at, say, a .05 or a 0.6, and you can still be taken in?
Yes, there's a presumption in the law that if you're a .05 or less, or actually less than a .05, you're presumed to not be under the influence.
Okay.
And then you're presumed to be under the influence at a .08 or higher. So between a .05 and a .08, there's no presumption at all, and it's really just the officer's opinion as to your sobriety, in essence. And it's not to say that any impairment is not under the influence in California. So typically,
what does that mean?
Well, in other words, you have a drink and you might feel
tipsy
a little bit, or you might, that kind of a thing. But maybe you're still safe to operate a motor vehicle. It's not a zero tolerance law. It is not able to operate a motor vehicle safely, and they use your driving pattern. But a lot of times, at night, people get stopped for a license plate light out, or something that would not be indicative of under the influence, not weaving or missing a stop sign or blowing a red light or something like that, or an accident, but they are stopped for a license plate light or a tail light that's out, or they're stopped because they didn't have a front license plate on their car, or they're stopped for some innocuous reason like tinted windows at 11 o'clock at night. Right? So and it's okay to stop somebody for that. Not suggesting that I like that kind of a stop, but it is okay for the officer to make a stop, and they do.
Terry, explain your background just a little bit. I did in the monologue, just briefly. You've been dealing with DUI cases now for 15 years.
Well, I've been dealing with DUI cases for 27 years.
27 years.
And I was a prosecutor in Modesto and County Stanislaus for about a year and a half or so, and then I came back to Fresno.
But you've been focusing on DUI exclusively for about the last 5-6 years?
15 years.
15 years, exclusively. See, I got my numbers wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you defend many of these suspects, is that right?
That's right. And my focus largely is on the science of DUIs, alcohol distribution, consumption, distribution, elimination, the testing mechanisms, the blood testing, the breath testing, things like that. There's a lot of gray area in those machines and in those that equipment and the people that do the testing. And there's a lot of variables in that. For instance, when you blow into the machine and you blow a .08, the science behind it would say that that .08 could actually be an 05 or an 06 up to maybe a 1.2. There's a range of possibilities. Just because the machine says it's a .08 doesn't necessarily mean it's a .08.
So there is a flaw in the system?
Well, it's as good as we have. We have breath tests. If you're a .16 and you get out of your car and you're stumbling around and you're weaving prior to that, and you get out and you stumble and you throw up on your shoes, I think the 1.6 is probably fairly accurate.
Well, what if you're doing all those things that you just suggested and the breathalyzer says you're at a .06?
Well, then you've got issues. but you can be at a 0.16, and what if you test, let's say, a 0.12? Let's make it more realistic.
All right.
0.12, but yet you perform these field sobriety tests correctly, and you were driving, you were stopped for a tail light out, and you answer all the officer's questions, and you don't exhibit any signs of intoxication or very few signs. And keeping in mind, of course, that field sobriety tests, the roadside agility tests, people sometimes, actually most people can't do them sober. So given those things, that maybe that 1.2 is not an accurate result. So we have to look behind that, and everything has to kind of correlate to each other. So if you have what they call the objective symptoms of intoxication and a poor driving and a higher result, then yes, it's likely to be accurate.
What's the more accurate way to determine somebody's blood count is to do a blood test,
Well,
right?
the blood test is the most accurate. It would be the gold standard, but there are a lot of flaws in that. Science is a prove it proposition. It's not a trust me proposition. So I'm here to test the method in which they draw the blood and take the blood. And
do they draw the blood right there on site, or
no? Not in California. In Arizona, they do.
Okay.
The officer sticks a needle in your arm, but in California,
wow.
Yeah,
in Arizona,
yeah, it's pretty bad. But in the dirty road conditions, I guess.
Okay, I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, contamination, but there's lots of issues with fermentation and contamination, and the machine doesn't know the difference. The gas chromatography, the machine doesn't know the difference between alcohol that's in your blood at the time or alcohol that maybe is as a result of contamination in your vial or alcohol that's been fermented in your vial.
So Terry, how soon after do you have to do that blood test for it to be accurate?
Well, you mean actually the chromatography?
Before when they draw the blood, how soon?
The drawing of the blood has to be done within 3 hours from a legal standpoint. Title 17.
Okay.
And actually it can be done at any time, really. And,
all right.
and there, it would be a question as to what you were at the time of driving, because that's the issue.
So if you go beyond the 3 hours, it's not going to be accurate.
Well, it may not even be accurate an hour afterwards. But we're also talking about they draw the blood and then they may not test it for several days. And then it depends on how the blood's stored and where, sometimes the officer will throw the blood in the back of the police car in the middle of August and
just leave it sitting there.
And leave it sitting, well, for 3 or 4 days before they put it in the evidence locker. And I've had those issues. And when that happens, their fermentation occurs. And then there's fermentation, which means there's alcohol produced within the vial. And that alcohol, the machine doesn't know the difference between that alcohol or the alcohol that was in your blood to start with.
Oh, so if there's already alcohol there, it adds to it.
It just adds to it. Now you have maybe an inflated result.
Okay, all right.
So those are the issues.
Got to take a break. Terry Wapner, a DUI attorney here in Fresno, is our guest today on Connect with Me. We're glad to have him along, and he took the time. He was in court earlier today, and he took the time to come by our studios to talk to us about DUIs. And 436 MeTV option 11, if you want to call in, do turn down the sound. We're back with our program in just a moment.
When you're looking for KitchenAid innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, will help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified KitchenAid appliances save you energy and money, and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Back here on our program, Connect with Me, we're talking about DUI crashes here. And I want to ask you, Terry, before I get into some other stuff, is it difficult for you to defend some of these people that have committed this crime of DUIs, or maybe someone who's involved in a DUI crash, maybe killed somebody, I don't know. Is it difficult for you
Absolutely.
to do that?
Oh, you mean personally difficult?
Both personally and professionally.
I guess in 27 years that I've been doing this, I've done murder cases, and I've
Yeah.
done sex cases, and gang cases, and drugs, and
My
all of
goodness.
those things.
Yeah.
And everyone always asks, how do you defend those guys? And I just, and it's the same thing with DUIs. Although DUI has touched, I think, a lot more people, I think, because in some fashion, I think it's a little more apparent. And plus, there's a with MAD and with all these organizations that put up signs and all sorts of things like that, the education of the public is not done by the attorneys or by the law. It's done by these outside sources.
So what happens? I mean, there's nothing that says you can't go out to dinner
That's
with
right.
your wife or your girlfriend or your family and have a glass of wine at dinner and get in the car and drive. That's not breaking the law.
No,
so
it's
what,
not. And that's part of the problem, is because, in essence, in a DUI, you're committing part of the crime anyway, and legally. In other words, you're having something to drink. It's not illegal to drink and drive. It's illegal to drive under the influence, which means you're not able to operate a motor vehicle safely, or drive with a .08 or higher. So you can get, maybe you're fine through a .08, but let's say at a .07. You're fine, but once you cross that level to the 08, now you're breaking the law.
What happens to people? I mean, they know they're not supposed to drive under the influence. What happens to someone when they get into a situation and they overdo it at a club or when they're out to dinner? They have one too many.
That's the problem, and people don't. The older I get, the less I drink, it seems like. So, when I was younger, I didn't. You
don't think.
Yeah, you don't think, and drinking also lowers your inhibitions, and the alcohol affects you in a way that you think you're invincible, and you do those things. So
you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm fine."
Yeah, it's only a mile, only 2 miles. I can make it home, and then we have issues, and that's part of the problem. Is the ones that are on the borderline of the 08. Those are questionable. People feel fine a lot of times, and they think they're okay to drive, and maybe they're not. And you have to kind of know your body, but unfortunately, people don't.
I know you're not a doctor, but I'll tell you what, as a defense attorney, I'm sure you have studied this and probably done a tremendous amount of research. What does the alcohol do to one's body in terms of reflexes? Is that part of the problem?
Yes, it lowers your timing, in essence. So there's a whole scale, in essence, that people have, or that experts have, from a 0 to a .02. You might, they have different levels, so obviously the more you drink. Typically, though, the first thing that goes is your mind before your physical abilities. So,
really?
So, and all the experts will agree that it's your mind that goes first. You're slower to react, slower to respond. As you drink more, your physical abilities become impaired.
So if you see that car in front of you, you're slower to react and pushing the brakes.
Exactly.
Or maybe swerving the wheel.
Exactly. Your mind telling your body to react or to do something.
Yeah, it's slower.
It slows down, and a lot of times you drive faster when you're drinking. Different than marijuana, where people typically drive slower when they're drinking, or when they're when they're smoking marijuana.
Yeah, let me ask you about that real quick.
That's huge, by the way.
I'm going to ask you about because California may in fact pass the marijuana law, much like Colorado.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that, and what kind of an effect would that have on drivers on the road? Would it be similar to alcohol?
It's similar, and it's not similar. And research has shown that typically people drive better than a DUI, than alcohol, and the reason for that generally is that people slow down. They slow down. They're not driving.
Marijuana
slows you down.
Slows your brain down?
Yeah, but you still can be impaired, and you still can be affected.
Take a call here. Good morning, you're on with Terry Wapner. Your question, please.
Yes, you always hear on the news and officers talk about DUIs and then DWI. And what is the difference between the two? And the other question I have is, if you've had a history of let's say DUIs and stuff, can you be charged with murder should your act actually kill somebody?
Two good questions.
Well, okay, so the first answer to that, the DWI versus DUI. Every state is different with respect to the law.
Driving
DWI stands for driving while intoxicated. Some states call it, there's no difference. Every state has different laws.
It's all the same then.
Some states call it a DWI. Some states call it a DUI. California's DUI. And it really, when we talk about it, it's interchangeable, really, although in California the proper term would be driving under the influence, or DUI. So
and his second question was
the Watson murder.
The murder.
There's now, there's certain things that are required, certain elements of a murder case, and one is malice aforethought.
You're not talking about me.
Not Malos. Malice, I-C-E. M-A-L-I-C-E.
No, I know.
So, if they're thinking about you, it can be murder. No, it's, and so what happens is typically when you drink and you drive and you get in an accident,
right,
and you kill somebody, if you have not had a prior issue with it, you were never notified. It's common knowledge, but you would never notified that drinking and driving is dangerous. If you continue to drink and drive and get in an accident, you can kill someone, you can be charged with murder. So once you've had prior offenses, they now are required to tell you that. And so therefore, if you do it again, the courts have determined that would be malice aforethought. So
you can be charged with
murder.
So you
can be charged with murder. Yes.
Yeah. Several steps that lead up to that.
Yes, and usually on a first time, and if you've never been, then it'd be more like a manslaughter as opposed to murder.
Right, like the Lauren LeBeau case in Maldonado.
Exactly, that would be manslaughter and not murder. Now, if he had a history, Lauren, if he had a history of drinking and driving, then he would most likely have been given that advisory, and then he could be charged with murder.
We're going to talk about that after the break here. Talking to Terry Wapner, a DUI attorney. We'll talk about the Lauren LeBeau and Maldonado case here on Connect With Me in just a moment. We're back with our program.
1 Adam 12.
This is Adam 12. It stars Martin Milner as Officer Pete Malloy, Kent McCord as Officer Jim Reed.
1 Adam 12, roger.
This black and white patrol car has an overhead valve V8 engine. It develops 325 horsepower at 4,800 RPMs. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. It has a top speed of 120 miles an hour. The automobile has 2 shotgun racks, one attached to the bottom portion of the front seat, one in the vehicle trunk.
You want me to drive?
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Back here on Connect With Me on MeTV Fresno, Comcast 187. You're watching us live this morning. Good morning. You're on Connect With Me. Your question, please.
Yeah, John, I got a question about drunk drivers.
Okay.
My wife was killed by a drunk driver years ago, and he didn't hardly get no time out of it all. He only got 6 months. I think they should have stricter laws for drunk drivers.
Okay. All right, I appreciate your comment. I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have a question for Terry at all?
Yeah, I was a question I was going to ask Terry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you asking, should there be stricter laws?
Yeah, I think the laws should be stricter on drunk drivers. There's too many people getting killed, and the drunk drivers not getting no time out of it at all.
Okay.
So they should be strict. They should be stricter.
All right, I appreciate it. Let Terry respond to that question.
And that is the sentiment for a lot of people, I think. And certainly, I'm not here to suggest that you should be out there drinking and driving and getting in a 6,000-pound car and possibly killing someone. I've got kids and grandkids too, so I don't want that to happen. Unfortunately, sometimes it does, and it happens for other reasons. But typically, people that get a lighter sentence would be a first-timer. There could be different issues in the case that could cause someone to receive a lighter sentence or.
Before we get into the Donovan Maldonado case, ask you about prescription drugs. Now, can you be convicted under the DUI law if you're found under the influence of, say, a prescription drug or many of them?
Yes, and there's some new laws actually that came into effect at the start of this year. One is that you can't drive a car. You can't drive a car while you're addicted to drugs.
Does that fall under DUI?
Yes, and so yeah, it's a new code section while you're addicted to drugs. So if you're addicted to drugs and you drive a car, whether or not you're actually under the influence,
same thing as
you could be convicted
alcohol.
of a DUI. Additionally, and what's been happening more and more lately is the DUI drugs, prescription drugs. It doesn't just have to be illicit drugs. It can be prescription drugs. People are on Vicodin, they're on Xanax, they're on
whatever.
They're on Ambien is a big one these days. Zolpidem, which is Ambien, and you can be convicted if you're not able to operate a motor vehicle safely, and that could be from prescription drugs.
Another call. You're on the air. Quickly, short on time.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Terry. Terry,
morning.
biggest question I have for today is Fresno the capital of the DUI? That's one question.
Okay.
Very high considering the amount of people we have. The capital of the world, I could say, the DUI.
Okay. What's your second question?
And the second one, is there a school, the first time that you are pulled over for DUI, do you have a choice to go to a place where they help you with your alcohol? Drinking problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the last question first. In every DUI, you'd be required by the DMV and the courts in a large respect to go to a drinking driving program, and you have to do that in order to get your license back. So yes, there is a school regarding that.
Okay, and the first one, are we the capital of DUI?
Well, I mean, the way they advertise it, a lot of times they say that we're the drunkest city in the country, I think, and I don't know how they come to that. Every year we have about, we used to have about 7,000 DUI arrests in Fresno County. That's dropped off in the last couple of years.
Hey, I want to go to the Donovan Maldonado case. Let's put that little boy's picture up on the screen. He was killed a couple of years ago by a driver that was convicted of drunk driving, manslaughter, I guess in this case. Let's put his picture up on the screen. Poor little Donovan, he's gone now. He was dragged for several hundred feet. Lauren LeBeau, the former coach out there at Central Unified, basketball coach, very well respected, but was caught drunk driving. And let's take a look at the crosswalk. This is exactly where it happened. It happened at night, around 9 o'clock at night, as the Maldonado family crossed this crosswalk here. Donovan was on his bike. Lauren LeBeau just came along and was driving under the influence, apparently. Terry, you live out there near this crosswalk. What do you make of the case? Lauren LeBeau now serving, I think, 12 years for manslaughter.
Yeah, that's my understanding. 11 or 12 years.
Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's unfortunate on all accounts. I mean, I understand the family, the Maldonado family has suffered, obviously, a tremendous loss. The other family members have had surgeries and issues regarding that.
It's a mess.
It really is a mess, and it's really unfortunate. And by all accounts, Lauren LeBeau before this was considered to be a great guy, good coach.
A lot of people thought he should have gotten 20 years or more.
Well, and people are vindictive that way, and they want, certainly...
Your thoughts are...
Well, I just think it's unfortunate for everybody. It's unfortunate not only for the Maldonado family, it's unfortunate for the LeBeau family, and unfortunately there's nothing good that came out of this completely.
Do you think that would have happened anyway, even if LeBeau had not been drinking?
Well, I'm familiar with this, with a crosswalk, and it just followed along an old railroad track line. It wasn't really designed very well.
Yeah.
It is blind in some spots, so
I never would have put a crosswalk there.
No, it was convenient to do. They took the tracks out and they put a crosswalk there.
I don't know if we have time. Let's put one of the graphics up, the full screens. I want to check those out and let Terry comment because we have about a minute left. DUI crashes in California on average. You can read some of them here. Do you dispute any of these numbers that came from the California Department of Alcohol, Terry? Go ahead and change the next one.
They are, I'm not sure where they're getting some of their stats. And when they say 40% of accidents involve alcohol, they also include in that if it's a car pedestrian accident and the pedestrian was under the influence or was drunk, basically, and they or they stepped out off the curb and got in an accident that way, they would consider that to be an alcohol-related crash. So I don't know. You can't necessarily put that on the on a DUI driver, you can put it on the DUI pedestrian. So,
hey, sadly we're out of time. This half hour goes by quick, Terry. But
thank you.
Would you come back again?
Absolutely,
sometime?
anytime.
We appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Thank you. We know how busy you are. Terry Wapner, a DUI attorney here in the city of Fresno. We're glad he could take the time to be with us today. We're going to be back with another edition of Connect with Me here on MeTV Fresno, Comcast 187 and 43.6 tomorrow. Have a great day.
From the pages of history and the untamed prairies of a young nation comes one of television's and America's most memorable folk heroes.
Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big man.
Well, you're Daniel Boone.
Yep. Fess Parker stars as the legendary Daniel Boone, with Ed Ames as his trusty sidekick, Mingo.
Pleasure indeed. A Kentuckian named Daniel Boone.
That's me.
Watch Daniel Boone weekday mornings at 9, 8 Central on MeTV.